today. The first webinar is featuring speakers from we've got 5 speakers for you from Mumbai and Delhi and 1 speaker from London. Why did we decide to do this? There were lots of cancellations and postponements of events happening across the country. We felt it was a good opportunity for us to see if we can pivot and look at this as digital content, because we weren't doing a performance, so it meant that we were able to adapt to a different format really quickly. So what we tried to do was just ensure that we can still continue to have these important industry conversations in such times in particular, but do it in a way without endangering our audiences. So we're happy that you're joining us from wherever you are in India or the rest of the world. We're also using this as an opportunity to learn new ways of working that will no doubt have an impact for us in the foreseeable future. It seems a lot of events are being postponed right up to May and June. So this is a way for us to see whether we can conduct an event of this sort in this session. I do also want to mention that this event is currently recorded, so just to let you all know. So thank you again, Jonathan, for that wonderful introduction. I will now dive straight into what this event is about and the format of this event so you can participate in it most meaningfully. So to begin with, a big welcome also to our teams. As you know, our teams are currently operating from Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, Chennai, and Kolkata. All of them have tuned in, along with our speakers from the 3 cities and countries that I mentioned. So all of us have been working over the last 2 weeks since the COVID situation started getting more severe, to talk about how can we adapt very quickly. So first of all, I'd like to give a big thank you to all our speakers for being patient with us and coming on various test sessions on Zoom to see how things are working and how they're being managed. So thank you once again. What is this session about? We felt that as a third leg of a Festival Connection series in 2019-20, we must address the question of leadership and governance. Even more important in the times that we're living in at the moment. There are all kinds of festivals. We have mega festivals, we have government-led festivals, we've got IP or brand-led festivals, founder-led festivals, community festivals, and we felt it was good for us in this country to see how these varied festivals are managed and have been managed since the festival sector as an idea came into being. So this is our way of understanding what these models look like and how are these models operated in this country and the kind of leadership that drives these models. So what we are looking at also are the motivations of people initiating these festivals and these festival models, and how do they adapt to the growing systems and structures. There are festivals that begin with 300 people, 400 people, and in about 10 years time they've quadrupled and sometimes 10-rupled their audience. That's not even a word. But how do they construct newer systems and structures to adapt to this growth? What does it mean for their own incomes, their own ways of working, their own ways of thinking about a career in the sector? So these are some of the questions that we'll investigate through these sessions. What we have for you today are industry experts, as I mentioned, from India and the UK, that delve deeper around the practices of governance of festivals, leadership of such organizations, the structures of such organizations, the roles and workflows of key team members is what we're going to be addressing. And how do they adapt and change over time? So here's the format, and also along with that some hygiene and ground rules. Each speaker is going to present for about 10 minutes. This presentation is going to be followed by one question that will be asked by either me or Jonathan, my co-moderator. You can also see the Q&A box, and I'm going to share my screen in a second. You can see the Q&A. Oh no, that doesn't work. You can see the Q&A box, which is right at the bottom. You can tap into the box and ask your questions. Yes, this will be recorded and accessible afterwards, though I will not be responding to all these questions in this fashion. Our teams are looking at all the questions here. But this Q&A box is where you can ask your questions. Our teams are on the Q&A box, and they will pick some questions that can be answered live by our panelists, and some questions which they can answer by typing into the box, which they will be doing over the course of these sessions. My request to you is that try and put your questions to the speaker that is speaking at that time, so you can absorb what they are saying, but also come back with some of the queries that you might have. There is no compulsion on any of the speakers to answer all the questions. You can pick and choose what you want to answer by text. But at the same time, if our teams are putting a question and asking if the question can be answered, we will ensure that those questions are answered here. At the end of all speaker presentations, we'll also have some time for some additional questions. For those of you who are unable to join us on Zoom, you're more than welcome to check out our FB Live that's currently going on. All of this is also on Facebook, through the Facebook medium. You can ask your questions there. You can write to us at info@art-x.co as well. We will type that up and put it in the chat box in a second. We must mention, though, it's a 2-hour webinar. We understand there's a time constraint, so we will not be able to answer all the questions, but we do assure you that you will find these answers through our various other social media platforms. You can find them on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, where we'll be attempting to answer some of these questions over the next week until the next webinar, which is on the March 27th. Save that date. And lastly, please do tag at the ArtExco, at British Council India, and use the hashtags Festivals for Future and Festivals Connections whenever you post on social media, so we can track the conversations and respond to you at the earliest. With that, all my hygiene factors are done. If you have any questions, again, put them onto the Q&A box. If you have any queries, again, our teams will be answering. Please feel free to do so. With that, I would like to invite our first speaker, Festival Director Smriti Rajgarhia. Smriti, a warm welcome to you. Smriti is the director of Serendipity Arts Festival, but has also been leading the Serendipity Arts Trust, and they have been doing an incredible amount of work in the festival space, but also building a very unique construct of what a contemporary cultural organization looks like. Particularly, the Serendipity Arts Festival has been running for 5 years, and it's, to me, it's one of the most complex festivals in the country, owing to the logistical challenges of it being run in Goa with several state-run and owned venues, which is quite a feat in this country. But at the same time, also, it's incredibly interdisciplinary nature and the confidence with which it wants to develop each of these verticals in such interesting ways. And of course, the mammoth scale. So with that, our first festival model is going to be looking at the foundation-led model with a very unique vision. Over to you, Smriti.
Guys, just bear with me. That's desktop. Yeah.
So while Smriti goes live, you can see her bio in the chat window.
And can everyone see my screen? If somebody can just confirm that they can see my screen.
Yes, it's visible.
Perfect. So thank you so much, Rashmi, for that wonderful introduction to Serendipity Arts Festival and Foundation. I mean, it's been great. We've worked together and it's been fabulous what Artex has actually done for us and British Council. They both have been amazing partners to us. And we really appreciate being on this panel. I mean, in today's day and age, I have 2 disclaimers to make. One is that I have a dog in the house. So you might hear a couple of barks, but that's what we live with now. And the second is that I'm trying to address what Rashmi has asked me to in terms of governance. But before that, for the people who don't know, it'll be nice for me to give a little overview about the festival. So I have a short video that I want to play for everyone. So that was a little clip from 2018, a little promo that we'd made for the festival. We have done 4 editions, and this is our 5th year. It's our big year, and I must say every year we have faced many challenges through running the festival, trying to put together something which is of this scale. And I hope that this presentation will give you a little insight on how we've managed it and the troubles that we faced. So before we go on to the festival, it's very important to establish the foundation. The foundation obviously was started before the festival. 2015 was when the foundation started, and we decided that to make an impact in a country of our scale, we needed to do something more than just be a grant giving body. There was this entire idea of the arts ecosystem, how do collaborations come together, and then the idea of celebration through the arts came out, and that's really how we started. In 2016, we did the first edition of the Serendipity Arts Festival, which was, I must say, quite choppy. It was difficult to kind of pull off. We had 1.5 years to plan. Within the 1.5 years, we found our sites, we found Goa, we found our curators who believed in us in the first year when we didn't have a proof of concept. And then we went on to do 3 more editions after that. As you can see on the slide, we have grown from strength to strength every year. But I must add that this growth has not been planned. It has been very, very organic for us. There was no intention of us growing so fast the way we have. So Serendipity Arts Foundation actually looks at many aspects. Serendipity Arts Festival is the most public-facing project that the foundation does. Besides that, we have residencies, grants, we have something called Cinema 340, we have a small space, a basement in our office that we often use. We do workshops and talks. We have many collaborations that we run through the year. We also have 2 very important writing initiatives called Projects and Processes and Write Art Connect. Each of these aspects of the foundation were decided basis the fact that if we wanted to work with an ecosystem, what we could facilitate as a foundation. So residencies, grants help artists develop a production or a practice which they can't otherwise. Write Art Connect and Processes encourage younger writers to write a lot more about the arts. So how did we start the festival? We started it with a dream. We were a young bunch of people. We were 4 people in 2015. We started the office on the 5th of October. And at that point of time, we didn't have a structure of the festival. We didn't know what we wanted to do and how we wanted to really work with it. So it was a challenge to actually establish a structure. We looked at many examples around the world, and that's how everyone starts, right? With case studies. And we looked at case studies and we were like, oh, great. So, you know, Adelaide does this and Venice does this. But how does our context make it different? And then the idea of bringing many, many voices together came up, which informed the scale of the festival. So even before we went on to ground to decide how big the festival needs to be, the fact that the diversity of the country needed some kind of representation across genres and across time became the scale on which we built the festival on. Sorry, I'm just going to. So just to look at the office structure once, to be able to, I'm just trying to move this around a little bit, sorry. Yeah, so when we started the festival and we were 4 people, the note on which our founder patron, Mr. Munjal, kind of explained to us how we could run an organization was in the format of a startup. Usually foundations have very different structures, and foundations are older and have been in existence for much longer. We were a new foundation, and what do we really start planning on? What is the basis on which you actually structure a foundation, given the fact that you want to address a very large scale? We know that there is a dearth of art managers in the country. There's a dearth of looking at courses that inform you about art management. So how do you really build on an organization that comes from different spaces to then address the need for arts in the region? So our office structure as for today stands at a programming team, a marketing and operations team, a fundraising team, finance, admin, and HR. Now we've developed this structure over 4 years. We didn't start like this. Like my previous slide said, we were 4 people when we started, and we were 10 people when we were on ground. Something I don't recommend at all because we did suffer a lot in the first year. We tried to build an organization which had a horizontal structure. So where each person in the organization has a specific skill set. It's not a duplicable skill set, but they also have the ability to step up and take on somebody else's or essay somebody else's role in case of crisis. And that's how we really built it. So even though people have segregated KRAs that they work on, it became important for us to make sure that the idea and the nature of the organization doesn't go even when we are growing. Currently, we are at a strength of 32 people because we also realize for a foundation, it is very, very important for us to constantly look at how we can make the foundation self-sufficient. We all know there's an issue with patronage. We all know there's an issue with how do we get funds into an arts and culture space. And it becomes very, very important for us to make sure that our structure supports the fact that it can be self-contained and it can basically support whatever activities we want to do in the future. The most important thing in the office that I feel is that we all come from the same passion. We all want to make this happen, and we're all willing to engage with this space, the politics of space, and any disaster management that comes our way together. So, like I explained, why a festival? It had to be multidisciplinary. It had to address a larger demographic. Our biggest mandate is how can we take arts back to public spaces? How can we engage with everyone? Every time we were asked who's your target group, we've said we don't have a target group, and we want to limit it to people. We don't want to limit it to any kind of specific people. So with the festival, we actually came up with very interesting formats. This is a short video from 2017. I mean, the reason I've also put this video in is for everyone to kind of see the kind of messaging we try and put out. I mean, as a festival and as a visual arts, performing arts festival, we've tried to make the entire space something that everyone can relate to. This is one of the projects we did last year, which was in Children's Park. It was curated by Sneha Khanvalkar, and the project is by Ruchi Bakshi. These are just small glimpses of what we've done. I think what's important for me to talk about, as Rashmi mentioned, was governance and the problems that we face. We need to understand through this conversation is that we are in a space where we have a collaboration with the government because we are using government spaces as partnership. What the government gives us are disused buildings and public spaces which are not usually used for the arts. That puts us in a partnership with them, and then that kind of changes working in a private space versus working in a public space where we are more in the eye of the storm than anyone else. For example, if you look at various other festivals or private spaces, there is more control. We somehow at many times we feel that we don't have enough control because we're also in the public domain. And one of the questions we've constantly tried to raise is that what is it and how do we react to this public domain? These are some public performances that we've done. And then obviously the question of how do you engage with the built forms of the city? How can you layer arts and culture in a public-private partnership? And how can it change the impact that it has on the city? All this becomes really important because these are questions and conversations that we have in the organization as a democratic space. I think one of the things that I'm really happy about is that the organization itself engages with enough discourse to be able to take this forth. The government partnership. And it's a free festival, which also then layers it with many other problems. When you say it's a free festival and we're inviting a larger demographic in, how do people perceive free? What does that place become? For us, it was a free festival because it was public spaces. Public spaces should not be charged. Art should not be charged. So how do you really work with that? So the office structure, the way the office works is that we try and empower every person who contributes to the festival in every manner, whether it's the programming team or the marketing team, the fundraising team. All of these people come from different parts of the world. They're not usually art managers. They are here because they want to understand and support the arts. Given the stressful nature of the job, given the public nature of the biggest project that the foundation does, we attempt to create a familial environment where the stress is distributed between all. I think the well-being of the organization is our biggest mandate. And what we try and inculcate as qualities for our workplace are, it should be happy, it should be collaborative, team-oriented, multitasking, process-driven, and compliant. Process-driven is very important for us because we are a foundation and we want to make sure that all the paperwork for the artist and for the organization is up to date. These are just some images from the festival that we done. Rashmi just messaged me that I'm almost out of time. So I'll just end by saying that the outcome is successful for us when we all come back in January, happy, smiling, proud of what we've done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Smriti. That was wonderful. And actually, in spite of the amount of work that we've done understanding the festival on this side, this was still very revelatory. So thank you, seriously, thank you so much for that insight. Smriti, my first question actually connects with, the first point that you raised about the public domain and how do you control what you want to be a part of the public domain, but how do you control what happens in the public domain or the response to what's happening in the public domain. So my question to you is, a festival of this scale, and particularly arts in India, tends to face a lot of backlash when it comes to any kind of socio-political conversation that you try and bring up into this public domain. So how is it that you are, your governance structure and the team structure helps you deal with challenges to risk and reputation and management of risk and reputation for a festival of this scale and stature?
I think, we've evolved very organically. I must confess that it's not like that we have a risk team or a risk assessment format. But I think every year has thrown great challenges at us. And because we are such a young foundation and because we have been doing this for only 4 years, every year we develop on what is it that the institution needs to be. I think it'll take us many years to actually formulate something which is almost like a document for risk assessment for public festivals. I don't think I have an answer to that now, but I must admit that it is only because of the belief of everyone in the organization that the steps that we take are morally and ethically correct is why we can actually tackle risk. And we've had risks every year.
Yeah. Thanks for that. I think there is a related question, and there are actually several questions that are coming up for you, Smriti. So I'm going to pick only 2 of them, which we can ask now, given the time that we have, and you can choose to answer, the question by typing into the box later the rest of the questions. But I think the first question that I have for you has to do with hiring. Is that how do you hire the core team, especially if you're talking about empowering the team members? It also comes with a sense of hiring people who come with a sense of responsibility and accountability. So the big question here is, how do you hire the core team?
The core team really developed organically. Like I said, when we started, we didn't know what we were doing. So we had 2 wonderful people join us. I will take their names on a public platform today. There was Prerna Jaiswal and Ketaki Verma. Prerna came from the background of TV and she understood production. And we hired her because she was so passionate about just getting into this that it seemed like the right fit. And Ketaki was a young girl who was just out of college. She had a background of the arts. Her parents were in the arts. And that's how the team really came together. And as and when we progressed, it has really been word of mouth. Like I said, there is a lack of arts management education in the country. So the organization really starts essaying that role. So when a new person joins us, we also call it the acid test. Like the first festival is an acid test. So if you survive the first festival, you become a part of the family. Sometimes you can't take the stress because the stress is very extreme because you're responsible for your life. your own life, your artists, your audience, and the city. And it's a lot of responsibility on you. So I think we usually hire people on goodwill, and then we see how they fit into the system. I don't think we have a specific process. When it comes to certain other departments like business development, it is obviously more based on resumes. I mean, what kind of funding you've done? Can you really talk about the arts in a specific way? So I think each vertical in the office has a different hiring policy.
So if I might just reiterate it for the audience, I think when you're talking about the team members in the core team, it's partly goodwill, partly instinct, partly seeing the work that they've done, and then them surviving the first year, as you say. But the more formal roles where experience is possible, that people can come with certain skill sets which enhances the work that they do for you, areas like BD, you follow a relatively more formal process.
Yes.
Right? Okay. There is one question which I think is related to the first question that I asked is, in case of difference in agenda of various teams due to on-ground requirements, what forms the basis of decision making in any given situation?
Sorry, in the case of, I'm just trying to read, in the case of difference in the agenda of various streams due to on-ground requirements, I mean, we really haven't faced it, right? So what is the agenda? The agenda for us eventually is to create a safe space for the arts in a public domain. I mean, there isn't so much difference in the agendas of various teams. We do often face problems of opinions within the organization. I'll give you an example. You know, we were a part of the entire Me Too movement, and we had to go through various curatorial changes. So when it first came to us, and we are a women-led organization, there were more women than men, there was a polarization in opinions. I think that polarization is good because that antithesis leads to a conclusion. What I think the organization has been able to achieve is that we resolve our opinions within the organization, and we have an outward strong front. Everybody will have different agendas, everybody has different ways of expressing themselves, but as an institution, how do we express ourselves is something we need to show as a united front, and we work towards that.
Great. Thank you so much for this, Smriti. Before we move on to our next speaker, we're going to take a 1 minute break. I think there is some technical changeover that the team is doing. So give us literally 1 minute. We will be back with the video in about a minute. So over to you, Dipti. In the meantime, Smriti, there are several questions in the chat window. Please feel free to respond. We'll be back with Mrs. Tapke and Mr. Tapke in about 1 minute. Thank you. All right. Thank you for that. Sorry about we were trying to change over to Facebook Live and to make sure that it's working. So with that, thanks once again, Smriti. It was great to sort of see the scale and the structure with which you have gotten Serendipity to. And I thought that was a great segue into bringing our next festival, which may not necessarily work with the same sort of structure and vision, but still has a different motivation and raison d'etre for starting the festival. So we wanted to move over to another extreme of a community-led festival. So we have the Warsaw Koli Food Festival, which is over the last 10 years has become extremely popular. It obviously celebrates the food and the culture of Mumbai's original inhabitants, the Kolis. With that, I'd like to invite Mrs. Harsha Tapke and Mr. Hansraj Tapke, who I'll bring on the video any second. Sorry, Rajhans Tapke. Sorry. This festival, as I mentioned, has been running for over 10 years. Also, this session, this particular presentation will be in Hindi and Marathi. I will be asking them questions both in Hindi and Marathi. And since this event is going to be recorded, you can look at translations later. But with that, I would invite you both. Please. So that's Mrs. Harsha Tapke and Mr. Rajhans Tapke. Over to you. आप शुरू कर सकते हैं.
तो हम अपना परिचय देना चाहेंगे. मुंबई के हम मूल रहवासी हैं, वर्सोवा गांव से. तो अपना व्यवसाय है मच्छी पकड़ने का. तो मच्छी पकड़ते पकड़ते महिलाएं मच्छी बेचते हैं. तो वैसे ही शादी के बाद से मैंने ये व्यवसाय स्टार्ट किया है, मच्छी बेचने का. तो मच्छी बेचते बेचते 2000 खत्म हो गए. मेरी शादी हुई 95 में. तो 2004-5 ऐसे साल आ गए. तो मच्छी बेचते बेचते कमतरता हो गई मच्छी की. तो मच्छी मतलब
मच्छी यानी कि मच्छी ऐसे वो मच्छी मारते हैं मगर जो मुनाफा होना चाहिए वो नहीं हो पा रहा था. तो अब ये खोज करना चाहिए था कि भाई जो मच्छी मिलती है उसी से पैसा बनाना था. तो वो तरीका क्या है, हमारे पास तो कोई प्रोसेसिंग प्लांट नहीं है या फिर उसको और वैल्यू एडिशन करने के लिए कोई यंत्रणा नहीं है. तो इसी बहाने हमने ये सोच रहा था कि हमारे घर में जो भी खाना खाते हैं बहुत से कहीं भी मिलेंगे वो याद करते हैं कि बहुत अच्छा खाना था. और वही हम होटल में फिश खाने जाते हैं तो इतना डिफरेंस आता है. जब भी हम फ्रेश फिश 100 रुपीज में बेचते हैं और वो पका के होटल में मिलता है 500 रुपए में. तो ये मुनाफा हमारे तरफ क्यों नहीं आ सकता है, यही सब सोच रही थी. और इसी बहाने हमें वो फेस्टिवल का खोज मिला. जैसे कि मुंबई फेस्टिवल 2004 में स्टार्ट हुआ था, उनमें हम तो शामिल नहीं थे मगर हमने उसको ऑब्जेक्शन रेज किया था. तो उन्होंने हमें नेक्स्ट ईयर में 2005 में हमें इनवाइटेशन दे दिया और हमने वहाँ पे स्टार्ट किया कोली सी फूड फेस्टिवल. जैसे कि हमने जब वो स्टार्ट किया तो बहुत सारे जब मुंबई फेस्टिवल आगे आया था कि आप ये इवेंट करो, तभी हमारे कम्युनिटी में गांव वालों को लगा था कि कोई गवर्नमेंट सहायता करेगी और हमें इवेंट करेगा. जैसे हम इकट्ठा हुए थे मगर जब भी पता चला कि इसमें गवर्नमेंट का कोई भी रोल नहीं है, अपने आप को ही इवेंट सक्सेस करना है, अपने आप हमें ही पैसा इकट्ठा करना है इवेंट के लिए, तभी बहुत सारे लोग नाराज हो गए, दूर चले गए. मगर हम आगे चलने वाली जिम्मेदारी हमें आई थी कि बाबा आप करोगे क्या नहीं करोगे. तो तभी हम हमारे दोस्तों के साथ ये इवेंट शुरू किया. जब भी इवेंट शुरू किया तभी पैसा नहीं था हमारे पास, एडवर्टाइजमेंट क्यों होती है वो पता नहीं था, क्या होती है कैसे उसके रेट
मालूमात नहीं थी.
कोई मालूम. फिर भी हमने जब भी स्टार्ट करते गए, हमारे फिशरीज ऑफिसर थे राजेंद्र यादव जी थे, हमारे फ्रेंड प्रवीण है, सूर्यकांत है, ऐसे सब आ गए और हमने स्टार्ट किया. जैसे ही स्टार्ट किया तभी कम्युनिटी के लोगों में ये अफवाह हुई कि बाबा इनके पास पैसा बहुत आया, तो काम शुरू हो गया. बाद में पता है हमने समझाया कम्युनिटी को, चलो आप आ जाइए, यहाँ पे पैसा वैसा नहीं, अपने को ही इकट्ठा करना है. मगर अपना क्या उद्देश्य है कि हमें हमारी कम्युनिटी को मच्छी से पैसा ज्यादा आना चाहिए, जो उस वक्त या अभी भी वही सिलसिला है. जो हमें जो मच्छी समुद्र से मिलती है उसी से पैसा बनाना है, नहीं तो हमारा जो उदर निर्वाह का साधन दूसरा है नहीं. तो पहला फेस्टिवल जब भी हमने स्टार्ट किया बहुत सारी कमी थी हमारे में. हमारा कल्चरल कोली डांस बोलेगा तो कोई भी अभी डांस करने को भागता है। म्यूजिक जो है इतनी साउंड अच्छा रहता है कि समुद्र का वो साउंड है, समुद्र की म्यूजिक है, और वो सुनने के लिए लोग पहला फेस्टिवल 2005 में लोग इकट्ठा हुए। टाइम्स ऑफ इंडिया ने जो एड दी थी उस वजह से विद इन 1 आवर जो हमारे महिलाओं ने जो फिश बनाया था वो सब खत्म हुआ था।
जो जैसे घर में हमारा खाना बनता है वैसे हम बेचने का, ये मेरे पति ने मुझे बताया कि आप खाना बना लो बेच लो, तो हम सोच में पड़ गए ऐसे कैसे खाना बेचेंगे, तो हर आदमी आके खाना खरीदेगा अपने पास से। तो जैसे होटल में जाके हम बैठ के खाना खाते हैं उसी हिसाब से अपना खाना हमें देना है, लोगों को बताना है क्या है कोली सी फूड। तो उसी तरह हम सब महिलाओं को इकट्ठा किया, तो कोई महिला आए कोई नहीं आए, फिर हमारे घर से हमने सब तैयारी की। मेरी मम्मी को बुलाया, बहन को बुलाया, हमारी जेठानी को बुलाया और बताया कि हम पूरा परिवार इकट्ठा करके एक खाना हमने तैयार किया जो हमारे घर में बनता है वैसे उसी तरह से, और थोड़ा बहुत लेके गए। 5 स्टॉल लगे 2005 में। जैसे हमने डाले थे 15 स्टॉल, लेकिन 5 ही स्टॉल पहले दिन चलाए। तो पहले दिन चलाए तो वो जो खाना बनाया था घर का खाना, तो 1 घंटे में खत्म हो गया। हमें लगा कौन आएगा, कौन खाना खाएगा हमारा, तो 1 घंटे में खत्म हो गया। हमें बहुत खुशी मिल गई।
और तभी सब बाकी के लोग जो बाकी के महिलाओं के गट थे, हमने पहले उसको अप्रोच किया था मगर वो हिचकिचा रहे थे कि क्यों, मगर वो भी ज्वाइन हो गई और बहुत सारा हमारा कोली कम्युनिटी वर्सोवा के सब महिलाएं उसमें ज्वाइन हो गई,
जो दूसरे ही दिन 15 स्टॉल भर गए ऐसे समझो।
और वही फिश और सब जो भी आए थे खाने के लिए, वो इतना फ्रेश फिश हमने आज तक कभी खाया नहीं।
बहुत लोग याद करते हैं, अभी तक बहुत लोग याद
तो यही हमने वो फेस्टिवल 2 साल 3 साल कंटिन्यू किया था। मगर हमारा जो कम्युनिटी है वर्सोवा गांव जो है 5 संस्था है, जैसे मच्छीमार कोऑपरेटिव जो सेक्टर है महाराष्ट्र में वर्सोवा का नाम सबसे आगे है। तो वो सब संगठन हम इकट्ठा आए क्योंकि हमें अभी लॉन्ग रन करना था, इसलिए तो हम सब इकट्ठा आए और एक चैरिटेबल ट्रस्ट बनाई जिसमें 5 संगठन के जो भी कमिटी मेंबर्स रहेंगे वो डायरेक्टली इस फेस्टिवल के मेंबर रहेंगे। और जो संगठन है वो हर संस्था हर 1 साल में अलग अलग होके नेतृत्व करती है। हर साल अलग अलग संस्था का अध्यक्ष उस फेस्टिवल का अध्यक्ष होता है, संभालता है, और उसी के नेतृत्व में फेस्टिवल होता है। और जब भी कोई भी दिक्कत आ जाती है सब संगठन के कमेटी एक साथ इकट्ठा होते हैं और उस समस्या का हल निकालते हैं। जैसे हम बताना चाहेंगे कि इतना भीड़ फेस्टिवल को होने लगा तो पुलिस यंत्रणा महानगर पालिका वो बहुत हैरान हो गई, मुंबई ट्रैफिक हैरान हो गई कि इसको कैसा कंट्रोल किया जाए। तभी हमें उन्होंने कहा कि इतना यदि भीड़ भाड़ होती है तो हम उसको परमिशन नहीं देंगे। तो फिर हम सब गांव वाले इकट्ठा हुए, पुलिस अधिकारियों और बीएमसी के अधिकारियों के साथ हमने बात की। फिर हमने जो 60 स्टॉल हम लगवाते थे उसको 30 में लाया है, और क्योंकि लोगों के लिए ज्यादा स्पेस होना चाहिए, सेफ्टी होना चाहिए, फायर ब्रिगेड होना चाहिए। फायर ब्रिगेड की गाड़ी भी अभी वहां पे हम पूरे टाइम वहां पे रख देते हैं। जो हेल्थ डिपार्टमेंट है बीएमसी का, पुलिस डिपार्टमेंट है, ट्रैफिक डिपार्टमेंट है और लोकल बॉडीज है, सबको इकट्ठा लेके हम वो काम करते हैं। और उसमें खासियत हमारी बात है कि हमारी जो कल्चर है, हमारा संगीत है, हमारा नाच गाना है, और हम किस तरह से फेस्टिवल मनाते हैं वो सब,
और उसी माध्यम से हमारा जो खाना है अलग अलग तरह का सी फूड, मतलब वो प्रेजेंट करने को हमें बहुत आनंद मिलता है।
यह तो इवेंट होता है, जो भी हमको स्टॉल लगते हैं तो एक स्टॉल में करीबन 15 से 25 महिला काम करती है, और जो भी मुनाफा होता है उनके लिए। हम जो ऑर्गेनाइजर टीम है वो हम मुनाफा नहीं, हम क्या करते हैं ऑर्गेनाइजर टीम, हम जो उस वक्त का इवेंट का जो खर्चा होता है, डेकोरेशन होगा, लाइट होगा, साउंड होगा या अदर एक्सपेंसेस होंगे, उतनी तक ही हम पैसा इकट्ठा करते हैं और जो भी इवेंट का स्ट्रक्चर बनाते हैं। मगर जो भी प्रॉफिट होता है वो स्टॉल की महिलाएं जो पूरी मेहनत करती है और अच्छा फ्रेश फिश के मेनू व्यंजन बनाते हैं वो बेचते हैं, और उसका प्रॉफिट है वही
तो
महिलाएं
अभी क्या काम करते हैं हमारे कोली कम्युनिटी में, क्या रहता है 8 महीने काम करते हैं, 2 महीना ऑफ सीजन रहता है। तो 2 महीने में कौन से भी टाइम पे 15 दिन के लिए टूर पे जाते हैं। तो अभी जो महिलाएं वो सब पैसा कमाते हैं, मतलब हमारे बोलने का उद्देश्य है। तो उसी वो अभी फेस्टिवल में काम करते हैं, वही महिलाएं 25-30 महिलाएं एक स्टॉल पे आधार करते हैं। तो वो महिलाएं हर मतलब जून में वो सब तीर्थ यात्रा पे निकलते हैं, ऐसा भी काम करते हैं। उनको जो मुनाफा मिलता है वही पैसा उसी में डाल देती है और तीर्थ यात्रा का आनंद लेते हैं।
थैंक यू मिसेस टपके, मिस्टर टपके। मुझे पता है आपको एक वीडियो भी दिखाना है, सो जस्ट बेयर विद अस फॉर 1 सेकंड, वी जस्ट शेयरिंग द वीडियो विथ यू। Yeah. So that's the 3 of them. Tanay Tapke, who's also their son, has been helping us with this conversation. This is a little few images about the festival, and here's a video.
अशी दर्याची डोलते हौर डोली लगावलाय सुद्धा सारू अशी दर्याची डोलते हौर डोली लगावलाय सुद्धा सारू याला इलय तारूर वाट नव बगदै याला इलय तारूर वाट नव बगदै याला इलय तारूर वाट नव बगदै याला इलय तारूर वाट नव बगदै।
That's great. Thank you so much, Mr. and Mrs. Tapke. So we've got one question for you. आपके लिए मेरे पास एक सवाल है कि आपने कहा ये 5 संगठनाएं हैं जो साथ में आके ऑर्गेनाइज करते हैं और हर साल वो जो फेस्टिवल डायरेक्टर है, जो अध्यक्ष है, वो संगठना का अध्यक्ष है। तो हर साल इनकम आता है, एक्सपेंसेस आता है। आप मॉनिटर कैसा करते हैं कि कौन कैसे पैसे मैनेज कर रहा है? क्योंकि ये पब्लिक चैरिटेबल अगर ट्रस्ट होगी आपने बनाए हैं तो लायबिलिटी भी हो जाती है।
बिल्कुल।
तो आप ये कैसे ध्यान रखते हैं कि सही तरीके से खर्चा हो रहा है, सब बैलेंस शीट एंड में सब साइन हो रहा है? आप इसके बारे में बता सकते हैं?
तो हमारे जो 5 संगठन है वो उसकी एक फेस्टिवल समिति बनाई है और जब भी हमारा एक्सपेंसेस इवेंट का खर्चा है वो हम बजट निकालते हैं और वो हिसाब से हम इकट्ठा शुरू कर देते हैं। जो 5 संगठन है उसका ओन कंट्रीब्यूशन वो देते हैं और डोनेशन या फिर स्टॉल का रेंट भी अभी आजकल हम लेने लगे हैं तो रेंट भी जमा हो जाता है और उस हिसाब से हमारा इनकम एंड एक्सपेंडिचर बना जाता है। एंड ऑफ इवेंट हम वो सब एक्सपेंडिचर इवेंट हमारा पूरा हम कमिटी में हम अप्रूव कर देते हैं। कमिटी में अप्रूव होने के बाद एनुअल रिपोर्ट हमारा बनता है, प्रिंट होता है, ऑडिट होता है। ऑडिट होने के बाद एनुअल जनरल बॉडी मीटिंग हम लगाते हैं पूरे गांव वालों की और पूरे गांव के सामने वो सब पूरा एक्सपेंडिचर इनकम सब शो कर देते हैं, अप्रूव कर लेते हैं।
अच्छा, और आप जब भी हम पहले बात कर रहे थे आपने मुझे ये भी बताया था कि जब भी अभी कभी गवर्नमेंट से आप मिलता है नहीं मिलता, आप खुद सेल्फ ऑर्गेनाइज करते
हाँ
हो,
जी,
तो कभी अब भी आपको पैसे रेस करने होंगे,
हाँ
तो उसके लिए लोगों को समझ में आना चाहिए कि आपके साल में कितने ऑडियंसेस आते हैं, उनका फीडबैक क्या है, उनको क्या अच्छा लग रहा है, नहीं लग रहा है, तो आपने कुछ ऐसा कुछ रिसर्च किया है?
नहीं, हाँ, 3 साल पहले हमने एक सजेशन फॉर्म रखे थे जो दूसरे दिन से स्टार्ट किए थे। पहले दिन तो हमारा सब इवेंट का भागदौड़ में ही चला गया था, क्योंकि वर्कर, स्वयंसेवक, कमेटी मेंबर, गेस्ट को ऑनर करने वाले सब हम ही सब रहते हैं ना, कार्यकर्ता ही सब वर्कर होते हैं। तो जब भी हमने सेकेंड थर्ड 3 दिन में किया था तो करीबन उसको सीरियसली नहीं लिया था, फिर भी 17,000 फॉर्म्स हमने फिलअप हमारे पास सजेशन दिए थे। 17,000 वो 3 साल
एनविएबल नंबर।
हाँ। और अभी हम जब भी काउंट करना है तो हमने अभी एक सिंपल सा लिख रहे कि हमें मिनरल वाटर हमारे पास हम परचेस करते हैं बल्क में। जैसे कि अभी हम ये जो जनवरी में फेस्टिवल हुआ था उसमें 80,000 बॉटल हमने परचेस किए थे। तो वो हम सिर्फ स्टॉल पे ही बेचा जाता है। तो हम ये भी उम्मीद करते हैं चलो हम थोड़ा सा 10% उसमें से लोकली हमने यूज किया, या फिर कोई उसमें डबल बॉटल पिया, ऐसे भी पकड़ते हैं। तो 80,000 बॉटल हमारी खत्म हो गई, तो करीबन 60,000 लोगों ने हमारे फेस्टिवल को विजिट किया, वहाँ का आस्वाद खाना खाया। ये हम मानते हैं।
अच्छा, एंड एक ऑडियंस की तरफ से एक क्वेश्चन है कि आप गवर्नमेंट के साथ कोलैबोरेट करते हैं, और करते हैं तो कैसे करते हैं? क्योंकि आपने बताया था कि आपने लेटर लिखा था गवर्नमेंट को कि आपने हमें इंक्लूड नहीं किया है।
हाँ, वो जो मुंबई फेस्टिवल एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, कोऑपरेटिव ऑर्गेनाइजेशन था, उन्होंने स्टार्ट किया था मुंबई फेस्टिवल करके। जब भी वो मुख्यमंत्री ने उसका समारोह किया था, उस बेस पे हमने पत्र लिखा था कि सकाल न्यूज़पेपर में हमारा पत्र छप के आया था कि मुंबई फेस्टिवल तो हुआ, मगर उसमें हमारे जैसे मुंबई के मूल भूमिपुत्र हैं उनको लिए बिना ही उनको सेलिब्रेट हुआ है। तो ये पत्र जो है, वही पत्र ने हमको मुंबई फेस्टिवल वालों ने हमसे कांटेक्ट में आ गए बेस्ड ऑन दिस लेटर, और हमने ज्वाइन हो गए।
और इसके बाद से आपने गवर्नमेंट से कोलैबोरेट किया है, दूसरे ऑर्गेनाइजेशन से कोलैबोरेट किया है? नहीं,
हमने ये जो फेस्टिवल है प्योरली कम्युनिटी बेस है।
अच्छा,
कम्युनिटी डिसीजन लेते हैं, कम्युनिटी ही कमेटी रहती है, कम्युनिटी की ही कमेटी रहती है, और कम्युनिटी के ही सब महिलाएं हैं, वर्सोवा की महिलाएं हैं, महिलाओं के ग्रुप जो खाना पकाते हैं, जो मुनाफा होता है। क्योंकि हमारा जो कल्चर है कोली समाज का, महिलाएं जो लेडीज है, लेडीज ही घर चलाते हैं। यदि हमें पैसा कुछ मांगना होगा तो मैं मेरी मम्मी से मांगूंगा, अभी मैं वाइफ से मांगूंगा, क्योंकि वो सब हमारा जो अर्थ व्यवस्था है हमारे महिलाओं के हाथ में रहती है।
ज्यादा से ज्यादा महिलाएं चलाती है।
हाँ, तो वो महिलाओं को ही हम प्रोत्साहन देते हैं। महिलाएं ही वहाँ पे स्टॉल में काम करती है और महिलाएं ही पैसा बनाती है।
Perfect. That's such a perfect way to end this particular presentation. Thank you very, very much. और आपके लिए और भी सवाल हैं, आप टेक्स्ट पे आप रिप्लाई कर सकते हैं, तने हमें हेल्प करेंगे रिप्लाई करने के लिए. So thank you very much. With that, we'll be moving to our third speaker. But before we move there, I just want to tell you one thing. Fun fact. I remember once I was attending a walkthrough of one of the Koli Vadas, and the guide once told me that one of the reasons why Bombay is considered to be very safe is because Bombay Valas are used to seeing women working in public spaces, and that's actually thanks to women from the Koli community who've always been there, very visible, very present, and leading and owning public spaces in Bombay. So that was a very interesting sociological connect that we drew upon when we were discussing first, bringing them on board for Festival Connections. And I also hope that for the next Festival Connections, which is going to be live with people, we'll get to taste your food, because that got me very hungry. So thank you very much once again. So with that, I'd like to bring upon our third speaker for the evening. That's Tarini Sethi. So moving from a model of a community festival to an alternative festival, what is the difference in this model? So just a little bit about Tarini's festival before we deep dive in. A community-led festival is run with, by a community. And here is another type of festival that's run for a community of artists. So Tarini Sethi is from Delhi. She's the founder and curator of the Irregulars Art Fair, which is India's first anti-art fair. It's sort of an alternative to the market-driven art fairs in the art gallery ecosystem, which creates a platform for a wide variety of alternative art. And so far, the Irregulars Art Fair has presented 2 editions. And with that, over to Tarini.
Thank you, Rashmi. I'm actually just going to screen share for a second. So firstly, thank you for inviting me to be here. It's great to be a part of a talk like this with people whose ideas and thoughts are so aligned to your own. Let me know if you can hear me, so then I'll start.
We can hear you. You're good.
Okay, fantastic. So I guess I'm here today to talk about Irregulars, what our goals were when we began and how we're trying to achieve them and the limitations that we met along the way. Let me start by saying firstly that Irregulars is run by 2 people, me and my partner Anant Ahuja. And our office, if you can call it that, is only really running for 2 months in the year. And that's the 2 months right before the show. So let me just start with the presentation. So we've been looking at case studies of anti-art fairs from around the world, and they've been in existence for a long, long time, and case studies of alternative art spaces. And we knew 3 years ago that there was a huge, huge number of artists in the country, and especially artists who weren't getting a chance to showcase their work except on social media, and sometimes not only that. And also that 90% of our population does not visit galleries. We don't have a museum going culture in our country. And we wanted to figure out a way to change that. And we were also, me being an artist and Anand being a designer, we were coming out of this like frustration. And this is where Irregulars came out of some kind of frustration for the both of us, because we just needed a space to actually show work. And we were sort of tired of the regular gallery spaces. 1 second. So these are a few options of different alternative art spaces and art fairs that exist. They're actually, honestly, hard to count, but I think around 100 that are in existence all around the world. I think Irregulars is the only one in India right now. Hopefully that won't be the case soon. So when we began, our main issue, I guess, with the art fairs itself were that they weren't in India were that they weren't inclusive enough and they weren't equal enough. And so we wanted to figure out a way to make them more diverse and equal and inclusive. And I guess that's been our main hurdle. That's what we've been trying to focus on for the last 3 years, and trying to figure out a way to sort of make Irregulars more inclusive, one, and somehow with that make the art market more inclusive. And at the same time, figure out a way to stay authentic and stay true to ourselves as well, because it's kind of hard to obviously organize an art fair when without money. And so when you're asking for money, definitely you need to be sort of one, careful with who you're actually going to be collaborating with and working with, without actually losing the essence of what you're trying to do. So our main hurdle has really been getting people to understand what an anti-art fair is, especially in the Indian art market that is primarily controlled by a few key players. We made a conscious decision, and a bold one, if I can say that, to call ourselves an anti-art fair. And in doing this, we have grown exponentially in the last 3 years. But because I think people have really been looking for something different in the art scene, but also we have also alienated ourselves from the core group of people who have the monetary power to back us. Saying this, we definitely have been lucky enough and fortunate enough to work with some really interesting people who have been wanting to look outside the box and work with different people who are trying to change and like shake up the art market. The India Art Fair has been a prominent figure for years, and I think bringing a new player onto the field has definitely shaken things up. But at the same time, most brands would rather sponsor IAF, for example, than say they are aligning themselves with an anti-art fair. And I guess that's been our like the hardest thing that we've been trying to figure out how to work through, because the second you call yourself an anti-art fair in India, especially where the core art group is so small, people don't understand it, one, and people think you're anti-art fair too, which we aren't. And so they're sort of always a little conscious and hesitant to give their money away, if I can say. So yeah, that's our main issue. So for the last 2 years, what we've been doing is that we've actually been 70% self-funded, and 30% we've been working on brand collaborations and sponsorship. But apart from that, it's all been from our own pockets, which has been quite a hard thing to do, honestly, because the way Irregulars actually even started was just like, well, with me as an artist who has definitely never spoken about money before, has not had clients, has never had to deal with talks or any sort of thing that's in a more professional setting. And here we are deciding to pull off this massive fair, calling ourselves the anti-art fair of India. So it's been a struggle finding money. It's not an easy thing getting funded for something that is so alternative in this space. So where we actually get our money from is family and friends, private art patrons, and personal savings. A lot of personal savings, if I can say. So last year, Anant ended up selling his car to basically fund our second edition. So it's been a lot of mishaps, lots of confusion, lots of missteps. But I think that's kind of how we've been growing, because the way the Irregulars even started was so organic, and there was no fixed structure, and that's kind of how we want to maintain it for a while at least, where every year our brand identity is supposed to change, our artists change. I know we do have around 200 to 300 artists per show, and 3 venues and everything, but we try and work with the best team. One, we have a huge team, which is all volunteers that we hire right before the show. And apart from that, it's just Anant and me who start working 2 months before. And when it comes to curation, for example, last year we hired a curator for each different so for example, we had a film curator, a mural curator, music curator, so that Anant and I didn't have to bear the burden of every single thing, which is very important to do. So, this is what I've said here as well. While governance processes are critical, it is the quality in which they are implemented that lead to successes. So Anant and I have very key roles, and we give our volunteers and our curators specific tasks, but at the end of the day, Anant and I do everything. So even as I call myself a founder and curator, and he's the creative director, he is curating as well. We're doing the admin work, we're emailing people, we're doing everything at the moment, because we are, at the end of the day, at a very nascent stage of the fair. We're young, we're only 3 years old, and hopefully at some point we'll be able to grow and figure out a way to get money from the right kind of people. So I'm going to end this with a little video.
Hi, Tarini. I'm not sure if we can see the video.
Yeah, I'm just going to play it again. Sorry. Can you see it now?
No, actually.
All right, let me just try once more.
Tarini, actually,
Yes.
If you're not able to play it, if the link is live, if it's available online, share it onto the chat window, and
I'll do that. Okay, I'll do that.
Thank you. So Tarini,
yes,
we're running a little short of time, and I know there are some questions that are there in the Q&A box for you. So I'm going to stick to one question at this stage. This is also keeping in mind that in Maharashtra, they've issued a notification to shut all offices from 6 p.m.
Okay.
We have to close this room at 6 p.m.
Okay. Okay.
So just being mindful of that, I'm going to
Yes.
dive into one question. So first of all, thank you so much for the presentation. I think it takes an incredible amount of courage to put your money where your passion is, and you've not just put your money, but you've also raised money and sold cars in order to do that. So my question to you is, you seem to be in a very precarious position right now, and with everything going around you, with the COVID-19 crisis, do you think this kind of a structure of governance, and if not leadership, definitely governance, that is helping you think through what these challenges are that you're dealing with, and how you're going to sustain and grow and continue to do what you're doing, which you so firmly believe in going forward?
Well, I think that's one of the main issues that we're dealing with right now, is how we can be a more sustainable structure, and how our festival can be more sustainable in the future. Because right now, like I said, it began so organically that we didn't think about the future at all. And now when we're actually trying to figure out how to monetarily sort of move forward, because after 2 years, obviously, your savings also dry up and you have no more money to actually build this festival to what you're trying to. It's not easy, but at the same time, there are a few things that don't change even when the market changes. The number of artists who exist in our country do not change. They're still there. They're actually growing, and the number of artists don't change, one. And two, because our ticketing is so cheap, the people who actually come for the show don't change. The number of people who come don't change. But I think the problem really is that, one, people don't want to invest in art when the art market is so down, number one. So that's a very important problem, because at the end of the day, that's how we make money, by selling the work at a fair, because that's what a fair is. And so we have to figure out a way to become more sustainable, and that's something that we've been working through for the last year. Another reason why we actually cancelled our third edition was because we just couldn't find enough funding. So it's definitely an issue that we're facing and trying to figure out. I mean, this is probably not the answer you want, but we want to figure it out as much as everyone else does, because at the same time, we didn't realize how big we got until it happened. And so
But
we are kind of...
Sorry.
That's okay, huh?
No, sorry. I thought you were done.
No, I'm done.
Okay. No, but that's, it's great to hear that, because that's actually how a lot of festivals start, especially passion-led festivals.
Exactly.
And what happens when you don't have a structure to support that? So we really hope that not just this presentation, this webinar, but also the next one that we do on the 27th, and conversations with us allow you to help build through the structure. I can see the questions have gone up, so I'll request you to please text your responses to them.
Yes,
thanks once again, Tarini. Thank you. At this stage, I'd like to bring in Jonathan. Jonathan, we've seen 3 very diverse presentations so far. Could you please share some thoughts about perhaps some common themes or issues that you feel have emerged out of this, that we can work to unpack over not just the next 3 presentations, but also hopefully the Q&A if we have enough time for one after, and the next session as well.
Absolutely. I've been feverishly making notes as we've had these 3 presentations so far. And what's absolutely clear from all 3 is that, first of all, it starts with a dream, as Serendipity outlined. The sense of cause and mission from the leadership is absolutely critical, not just in terms of the drive in those hard early years to establish the festival and establish the vision for the festival, but also in bringing people on board, in bringing partners on board, in bringing donors on board, and in bringing your staff on board, so that when times are tough, when you're all working extremely long hours over the course of a festival, you pull together. So that sense of vision and mission and sense of cause is really important. And I think that's come across all 3 festivals. And then the sense that whilst there's the huge wins from that, there's a certain price to pay. Certainly there's a certain price, in some cases, financially by personal investment, and in some cases in terms of the work-life balance being a bit shot. And how can festivals get through those early years and look at how they can establish a structure use research and consider the India context in terms of establishing a sense of place, a sense of pride in place, and a sense of pride of the local community, who's your audience, to want to return to the festival over the longer term. So I think those are the things I've taken so far from personal commitment, the vision, the establishing a structure and a framework, the trustees' role in problem solving, that was all true of the second presentation. Critically important that on the ground, not just as a strategic oversight, but also to help in those early years with their contacts and networks. I think, therefore, the question of how you scale and repeat, the other half of our 4 themes of the session, are where we can see that there's risk in all the festivals, even if those are established. I think that's what I leave it for now when we move on to the next presentation. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much for that, Jonathan. I think that's a great sum up, and actually a very interesting segue, I feel, particularly the last one that you spoke about when it comes to risk. Especially, I mean, in some cases, the festival is the mainstay of what you do, and in some cases it isn't. You know, you do several other things, and festival is a part of that. So I think it's also a great segue into our next speaker, Sara Elizabeth Chawla. Sara is the co-founder and director of the Magnetic Fields Festival, but also of Wild City, which does so much incredible work around support, skilling, concerts, presentations, festivals for alternative music in this country. So a little bit about Magnetic Fields, and I'm sure Sara will introduce more about the festival and Wild City itself, but it started about 8 years ago with 450 people, and it's now 4,500. It's a destination festival, but unique for being a sort of destination for the emerging creative community, mingling amidst music in a palace. So over to you, Sara. Look forward to hearing your presentation.
Thanks so much for the introduction, and thanks very much for having me. So I've got 10 minutes to just talk to you about the festival, about Magnetic Fields, but my talk is really going to be focused on the governance structure and really how we make decisions, and hopefully sharing lots of advice for anyone who is in the infancy or kind of conceptualizing their own event or festival. So before we go into governance, just a very quick kind of overview about how we've grown. So we started in 2013. We had about 300 attendees in the first year, and you know, the reality was that we were hoping for about 1,000 people in the first year, and you know, we lost a lot of money, and the only reason we managed to go into our second year was because that deficit was split between 5 partners. So usually I don't think many people would recommend going into business with 5 partners quite a lot, but in our case, you know, it actually meant that we were able to go into the second year, and it really when you have 5 partners and you are a very kind of startup model, like your governance structure and the way you communicate and make decisions is really important. So you can see kind of how we've grown there, and really like the main kind of agenda for starting Magnetic Fields was to really showcase the value in smaller, more discerning communities. We kind of felt that everyone was boasting about how big their audiences were and how many stages they had and how many lakhs of people went. So we were like, hang on, but there's something really valuable and really special in really small niche communities and festivals, and we really wanted to showcase what we felt was happening in the creative community around us. So going straight into our organization and governance structure, just to break it down for you, Magnetic Fields is made up of 5 equal partners. We use a majority vote for decisions that we don't unanimously agree on. The most important thing I feel about how we've managed to go into, we're now going to our 8th year, is that our governance structure thrives on, and this is going to sound really cheesy, but it's really true. It thrives on trust. You know, you have to really trust your partners. You need to be able to communicate honestly with the people that you're working with, because if you can't have a straight up conversation with your partners, like what's the point? But you have to also be really mindful about the way that you communicate. Mindfulness is really important, because you know, you can have like these insane 8-hour meetings and everyone throws these incredible ideas around, but and you're 100% not going to agree on most things, but the way you communicate how you're going to disagree on something is really important. And that is, you know, the cheesiest kind of the cheesiest part is, you know, your governance structure is really kind of needs to be bound by love for the people that you work with, what you're doing, and that's it's become like a key part of I believe how we've gone from, you know, a 300-person festival to a 4,500-person festival in 7 years. Next slide. Just very briefly breaking down quite crudely what the 5 partners do, so that there's some context. So Wild City, we focus on, and this is a very kind of basic breakdown. Wild City, we focus on content and curation, thought, production experts and logistic experts. We the people are amazing with tech and graphics and visual identity. Smriti is amazing at detailing and food and experience, and Abhimanyu is the most incredible host, and that's where, you know, the festival takes place in his ancestral home. So his relationship with the local community is really key. But having said that, you know, all of the partners are equally involved in kind of all the, you know, all the decisions. Even, you know, as we go into our 8th year, we're still very much a startup style format. You know, there is no festival manager. We each pull in all of our individual resources as entities to make this happen year on year, which goes into what's the reality of us making decisions. I'd love to say that, you know, every month we sit down and we have a really organized and structured board meeting where we go through a very kind of well put together itinerary. But the reality is that, you know, we're very rarely in the same place at the same time. So everything really starts on a WhatsApp group, and WhatsApp groups have been, you know, really, really, I think most businesses use WhatsApp groups, but that's how, you know, everything starts. Then usually we will take it to a Zoom meeting like this. We'll have you know, where we can see each other's faces. And then, and yeah, I think we've got to this point because we have placed a lot of significance on maintaining strong social rapport between all of us. So as much as we play significance on our connectivity as a business, we're also very mindful of each other socially in terms of like our families, and you know, it's you know, we make sure that we have a lot of fun when we are together. We also have a lot of trust in each other's skills and judgment. So ultimately we'll always lean, although we do a majority vote, we'll always lean on the expertise and opinion of the person who specializes in that area. And with a majority vote, I think the most important thing is really making sure that, you know, you document everything. So even though everything kind of might feel like it's quite unstructured, you really need to be incredibly structured with the way you document your decisions that you've made collectively as a team, so that there's never any point where there's a kind of, oh, I thought you said this, or we thought you said that. That's really, really important. So very quickly, an example of some decisions which we have challenges every single year, obviously, but you know, there's a saying, don't broke what's not fixed. If it isn't broken, don't try and fix it. And that's something that really, you know, I believe in. And so when someone suggested flipping the stages round, we were like, well, why? Because it's working fine this way. But ultimately we trusted the decision of that partner, and as soon as we flipped it, we realized, okay, this is much better for access, much better for safety, much better for setting up. So it was really, you know, not something that we would have considered doing, but as soon as we made that change, it was we could see what a great decision. So really like having that instinctive trust and knowing that what your partners are suggesting is really for, everyone's suggesting what is best for your festival. Another challenge that we faced recently is when we started selling out, we noticed that there was a really crazy reselling market of our tickets and packages. So last year we actually tried to spend a lot of time brainstorming how we would stop this from happening to make sure that everyone pays the same price and that everything's fair. And so what we actually did was we came to the decision to offer people 100% refunds up until the end of November, which was quite a risky strategy. And honestly, I don't think we'll be trying that again next year, but we're constantly trying to evolve how we approach challenges, and we'll try something out and we'll give it our best shot. And if it doesn't work, we'll look at how we can further refine it. Governance challenges are that this magnetic fields is a secondary business for everyone who's involved in this. So meeting up in person, as I've discussed, is a huge challenge. And another thing is that it's really important to be able to address the reality behind good intentions. So there's a lot of talk and you can have the best intentions to do something, but there's always a reality behind that. And so being able to kind of identify that and mindfully address that is really, really important. And creating sub-governance teams, so it has organically happened and has managed to help us to kind of refine our decision making. And in terms of how our approach to things has evolved, I think the key kind of advice is that we've worked with the same crews and the same partners year on year, which has allowed us to support efficiency and growth and lets us focus on developing the experience and content of the festival. We also, we never look at our relationships as one-off. We always look at how we can create deep roots with our partners, because ultimately we want them to be as invested in this community as we are. And it's actually, really this whole festival has evolved from word of mouth and from community support. And so you really need to engage with people as it, you have to share that responsibility. It's really important. And that shared responsibility has allowed us to develop and grow. And finally, I'm not sure how I'm doing for time, but I've got some advice.
You have 1 minute to go, sorry.
A minute to go, thank you. So I'll whip through the advice, which is, I think, sage advice really for any event startup. You really need to have a clear intention about why you're doing your festival. What gap are you trying to fill? Like, what is the purpose that you have started this? And you start off with a gazillion ideas that you want to implement in your first year, but the reality is that will not happen. And it's also much better to kind of let your festival experience unravel gradually over the years. There are certain things that we thought would be a staple of our identity from year one, but we haven't managed to implement them until the 5th or the 6th year. Originality is really important, and that's with your design language, with your website, with your approach. It's really important to not just think, okay, they've done this and it's worked well, so I'm going to just copy and do it. Focusing on all elements of your guest experience is so important. So everything from the toilets to how people check in, to how people get their wristbands put on, everything in terms, also obviously the content and stuff, but that's something that every single year we're constantly looking at and refining. How you engage with the people that are in your local community is really important. And we have finally started looking at, we've done a lot of isolated projects with the local community, and now we've got kind of a plan for a more long-term approach to how we work with the local community of Al Caesar, and that's amazing, because really we're so thankful to them for supporting us. And obviously, don't go into this in your first year or at all really with the intention to make money. Like it's more important to go into a festival business to meet amazing people. Communication and trust is essential. Like, you have to be able to communicate well, and you have to be able to disagree well with each other. I'd say that's learning how to not argue with someone, learning how to disagree with your team and disagree and respect them and be mindful of their opinions is really important. So that's it from me. Thank you so much. I hope that's been insightful and has managed to help someone.
Thank you so much, Sara. That was absolutely wonderful. I think there are several questions for you on the chat window. I have a couple of questions, but we're going to reformat a little bit more. We're going to bring Warren in directly because for two reasons. I think his presentation sort of aligns very well with some of the areas that you questioned and raised, but also being mindful of the government of Maharashtra at our backs, asking us to shut at 6. So with that, Warren, over to you. Welcome. Please do begin your presentation, but as you're pulling up your window, just a little bit about Warren. He's the Chief Creative Officer of Believe Entertainment and also a writer and actor, which he doesn't talk about a lot.
With good reason.
This presentation is crucial for the model it presents as a company that creates IP or brand-led festivals, and we felt this presentation was good to go up after Sara's because Sara's presentation, of course, looked at how she and 5 partners have built the festival together. Funding is really important. I know that's one of the questions that has been asked. But also with Warren in particular, he's invested in creating IP and brand-led festivals, right? And you have created and produced several of these, including the Ranthambore Music Festival. And what's also interesting with Warren's focus is the fact that his company, originally called the Entertainment Company, was acquired by the Paris-based Believe Music, shifting their focus to creating only music-based experiences for brands and audiences. So over to you, Warren. Look forward to hearing from you.
All right, thanks, Rashmi. I'm just gonna first share my screen. Okay, is that visible? Can you clearly see the screen?
We can see it. Can you make it full screen? If you can't, that's fine. Yeah, okay, perfect.
Right, good. Yeah.
Yep, go for it.
So, thanks guys for this. I think there have been some fabulous conversations. I'm gonna jump right into it because I know we are stressed for time. Just a very quick background of about us and the kind of work we do. We were the entertainment company. I was co-founder and creative director. We started this in 2011 with my partner Subramanian Iyer. We ran it as typically it's a straight up event company where our focus and our dream has always been to work on and develop IP. I think when we started the entertainment company, that was always our plan. But like many of you would know, creating IP is not easy, especially in India, with funding and several other challenges. So we spent the next 3 to 4 years doing run-of-the-mill business, working with brands, trying to understand the market, trying to understand the success and failures of other IPs along the way, which has been a massive learning for us. In 2018, we met with Believe Music, which is it's a music distribution company headquartered in Paris. They have a very interesting business model of working on the primary purpose of distribution is putting out artist content on platforms like Spotify, Apple, Savan, Ghana. But the CEO's vision has always been to create a 360 artist model, which is creating everything in-house from A&R to distribution to PR to video, as well as live opportunities for artists. And that's when we started conversations with Believe, which came at the right time, where Believe were actually trying to move into the India market in a bigger way. And they were trying to create as much opportunity for artists in India. And the Indian market is very different from the global one, where it's still not, a progressive ticket buying market yet. Yes, we do have platforms like Book My Show and Insider, but I think it's still evolving. So a lot of artists do rely on brand support and brand funded events, IP, and of course private events. So that's when we signed up in 2019. And of course, we went back to our core dream, which is developing IP. But of course, with our learnings of working with brands for 7 to 8 years, the idea was we could not be able to do an IP without the support of brands and brand funding, or rather, we would just not do it. It was a rule that we stuck to. We would not be, investing our own money or taking any kind of risk. So the idea was always working with brands to create solutions for brands, and these were largely experiential based solutions. So if it was a private event, or it could be an IP, and it would sort of be led by the brand or a host of brands for that matter. So I'll quickly go through this, but one of the reasons why we believe that music as a business and music IPs is growing is, as you can see, the market is growing steadily. And this is something that we pitched to our CEO in Paris, saying that, we should be looking at far more music IPs in India. And you can see the numbers, it's steadily going up. Several reasons for that. Music festivals, we believe, is on the rise because the consumption of music has changed. Now that it's digital, it's far more accessible, it's far more cheaper. It's the audience that's consuming this music, that's the millennial audience, which to us, this is a key audience that's actually looking to explore experiences as opposed to material sort of gain or material something. Brands and music, of course, brands today are looking at experiences in a very different way. They're willing and they're far more open to work with the festival creative to actually merge and blend well with the festival. And they see their audience present at these festivals, and of course there's a lot of value in it. So, and of course it's the business of it. So in 2015, we had the idea of actually creating something called the India Sponsorship Company. But it was in itself a business model, and we didn't have the time or the bandwidth. So in 2018, we launched something called the India Sponsorship Summit. This is something where we believe the idea behind it was to connect brands with rights holders, agencies, artists, anyone in the country who was looking for funding, sponsorship, or to connect with brands. And we ran it by a couple of CMOs as well as rights holders, the big ones, the small ones. And we saw a lot of, everyone felt there was a need for this. So we launched this in 2018. We've done 2 editions so far, 2018 and 2019. The idea is very simple. It's connecting brands with people looking for funding, looking for sponsorship. So what we did was, over one day, 40 plus CMOs in a room, talking on different platforms on sponsorship. So your audience was a mix of CMOs, brand managers, rights holders, investors, artists as well. This is roughly the breakup. I'm just sharing with you the kind of conversations that we had in 2018. The power of brand collaboration, just conversations that came out of a lot of what we just discussed, and some of the stuff that I've heard over a couple of sessions on sponsorship being a big challenge or funding being a big challenge. Ranthambore Festival, I'm just going to quickly run through this. This was actually started by 2 friends, Abhimanyu and Ashutosh, in 2017. I came on board as a consultant to the festival, and like Jonathan said, festivals begin as a dream and as a passion project, and that's how this one began. And Abhimanyu told me about it. I thought it was a great idea. I came on board to consult on the project, and in 2017, we took over as an agency curating the festival as well as managing it. So far more accountability in that respect. In 2019, after the acquisition, after my company was acquired, we took over the ownership of the festival, and a couple of reasons why we felt that there was a lot of potential in it. As a music business, our key agenda is to look at IPs of this kind and create something of value. I believed in the vision, and I think all of the founders believed in this vision, which is something that I felt was pretty unique. You know, it is a festival launched with a vision to conserve and celebrate culture, wildlife, and nature through the unifying power of music. And that to me was, you know, when Abhimanyu told me that this was the plan, I was sold. Since then, we've been working on this and growing it steadily. The journey started in 2017 with 700 people. That audience grew very slowly in 2018 to 900 people. In 2019, we saw 1,200 people, and of course, importantly, the brands that partnered grew as well. I think two things here. One is brands look at credibility and longevity of a festival. You know, and if you stick with a project, you know, past 2 or 3 years, and this is for, I think Tarini, who was talking about, you know, the challenge of funding. You will, I know it's the first 2 years that are the challenging ones, but it's the third and fourth, if you manage to see it through, you know, you do have people who back you and believe in this project, especially if you know, push forward. So a couple of the USPs of the festival, and this is something that I think we found very interesting. One is the venue itself. Ranthambore as a venue is possibly one of the most unique properties in India.
I'm sorry, just a quick interruption. We have a couple of minutes. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. So I'm just going to skip through. In terms of structure, this is pretty complex. It was never like this. It never looked so organized as it is now. But now that we are a corporate, we have you know, a lot of people who sit on decision-making processes. I sit on the CCO position, where I think it's interesting because one is the company believes in what we're doing and they've been backing it 100%, and that's very important. So for a brand or an investor or a company backing your idea and your dream, that's super important. We share the responsibility between CEO and CCO. So that's, you know, it's a left brain, right brain scenario. So, you know, it's a mix of creative as well as business, and we're well balanced in that sense. The executive committee is something that we formed last year, which is a team of, it's basically a think tank of people who throw ideas, critical about the process, what we're doing, where we're going, and they're also the ones who you know, put forward the idea that we need to stick with the vision, stick with the mission, and it's our go-to team basically. The festival director is someone who is really the one who's in charge on ground and organizing the whole project from a project manager perspective. So he or she is looking at the sponsorship team, the design and creative, the artist curation bit, the experiences and CSR, and of course, production. Challenges, yes, of course, there are always challenges. This festival began as a dream, with a great passion and great enthusiasm. But with that, there comes a lot of friends who work on the project free of cost, and with stuff that's free of cost, it comes with a lack of accountability and structure. So this was something that we spent a lot of time in 2018 and 2019 putting together, a more structured approach to this. Sponsorship obviously is a challenge, especially when you're launching a festival. It's the first 1 and 2 years which are the most challenging, because brands, question. The first thing is, how many people are attending, what's the target audience, the usual stuff. But what we did was we flipped it. We said that this is a festival that's not going to be big in numbers. We're going to keep it to a maximum of 1,000 people. And if we get more, that's fine, but we're going to cater to 1,000 people, and we're going to craft the experience for 1,000 people and not more than that. That's worked for us. We've had, and if you see the brands that have partnered with the festival, they're brands that actually want to talk to a smaller audience, or an audience of influencers, an audience of high net worth individuals. So what we did with Jeep was very interesting. In 2019, when we had them on board, we planned the festival in a way where we recommended that they organize a Jeep Trails rally, which is something they do for their customers. So they had about 100 Jeep Trail customers drive to the festival as a high point and a crescendo to their entire experience. So creating brand experiences that match with your festival is very important. Hospitality in Ranthambore is not easy, simply because it's quite unregulated. If you book a room on booking.com, chances are it just might get cancelled randomly. So that's something that we actually had to look at, and we're still working on. Roles and responsibilities. I think this is my last slide. Year one, I was merely an observer to the festival and offering advice. Year two is when we came on board more on a hands-on perspective, and took over supervising sponsorship, sales, and curating the artists. The objective from that year onwards was to control as much as possible, to make sure that we balance the P&L, and that was very important. So while creative is great and artists, the wish list is endless, P&L is super important. So it was important to focus on P&L and ensure that we have control on that. So yeah, I think so. That's it.
Thank you so much, Warren. That was excellent. But we're just going to dive straight in. And I picked up one bit from your presentation. And Sara, it'll be great for you to respond to this as well. Warren, you said brands now cover 70% of a budget, which we are trying to reduce to 50%. That's right. We've got the COVID crisis hit. Big events are being cancelled. I know, Sara, when you and I were talking, you've had to pivot on several events. So I'm trying to understand that, given your business model, which is so brand-led, or for that matter, funding from brands-led, how are you, or how is your governance structure helping you deal with the current crisis that's at hand, which is the COVID-19 crisis? So anybody could answer. Both of you can answer, please.
We're screwed, to put it plainly. We just had a massive music concert that just got cancelled in Dubai, which was supposed to happen next week. Another important thing is we can't go to brands right now and talk about festivals or concerts, it's insensitive. So right now the focus is on how to keep your conversation going on without making it a sales pitch, right? So for now, we do have a team that's working on the festival in terms of planning, in terms of artist lineup and a wish list, but nothing on the brand front. And we're going to have to wait it out and then connect again once this crisis is over and done with, and then see what the brands have to say in terms of budgets for the year, because the way we are seeing it is that the budgets this year, and from whatever brands have been saying to us, is that it's going to impact IP for sure. It's going to impact the kind of work that we're doing. So yeah, it's a big worry.
Thanks for that. Sara, would you also like to respond to that question?
Yes. Yeah. Hi there. I guess we're waiting it out, really. Honestly, we've had a group discussion yesterday via Zoom, and we're looking at how, as a brand, we can stay resilient. And I think we're coming up with all kinds of ideas. We're back to the drawing board. We've got to play out every possible scenario, really. And think about creative ways to address this. I think one of the best things is that you are your most creative in situations where you kind of everything just falls off the shelf. It teaches you about resilience, and it teaches you how to relook at everything. So you have to kind of just everything is off the table and on the table. It's we don't really know what's going to happen, but we're using this as a space to be as creative as possible, and to kind of regroup with everyone.
Great, thank you so much for that. I can see that there are several questions on the chat, on the Q&A window. I'll request both Warren and Sarah to answer to that. We will have to move. We actually had a 15-minute extra buffer, but given these regulations, we have to wrap up fast. So we will have to move to our last speaker. And I think, and thank you once again to all the speakers from the Indian festival circuit right now. We've got some really excellent presentations covering a range of models. And we think it's a great segue into looking at how the UK looks at its leadership and governance structures. So we've got Kate joining us from the UK. Kate Ward is a creative producer and consultant, and she was actually supposed to have been leading British Council's Festival Academy program, which was supposed to happen last week in Kochi, but it now stands postponed, along with many of the cultural events that are being planned. So India hopefully will see more of Kate soon. Over to you, Kate.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, you are loud and clear, but we can't see you.
Yes, good. Can you see me now?
Yes, we can. Hi.
Great. Hello, and thank you for that introduction. I desperately hope that we will be in India soon and picking this up where we left it. My presentation is very much based on the context in the UK and largely around governance decision-making structures. So I do hope that it feels relevant and applicable to individual situations, but also not too dry. I think it is quite a dry subject. I'll just get the presentation up. Here we are. So we thought we'd start by asking, what exactly is governance? And so there isn't one universal definition, but it is a word that's used to mean the management of processes for making, implementing and reviewing decisions in an organisation. The arrangement's largely split into two main areas for support and accountability. And most organisations in the UK are governed by a board who has two roles really. One, which is the entrepreneurial and strategic leadership of the organisation's objectives. And two is the prudent and effective control in including the assessment and management of risk. So it's largely acknowledged in the UK that there are 7 qualities of good governance. These are broken down as accountability, so the ability for an organisation to report, explain and be responsible for the consequences of its decisions. Transparency, the ways in which an organisation operates and is easy to identify and understand. Compliancy, ability to comply with internal procedures and external laws and the organisation's own constitution. The ability to be responsive, so to be relevant to the needs of the organisation over time, and to be participatory, so that relevant people can be involved in decision making, and it needs to be predictable, so that the same situations result in the same decisions, and it needs to be efficient to avoid misuse of resources. So there are various governance models in the UK festival sector. Let's start with the subsidised festival sector, which is the arts organisations that operate as charities or not-for-profit entities, which are typically funded by Arts Council England or local authorities. The traditional governance model here is of a charity, also a private company, but with a voluntary and unpaid board and paid employees who are led by a director. These organisations tend to rely heavily on public subsidy. They have a diverse number of income streams and are increasingly being asked to look more commercially, but often you'll find that they are 40% public funded through Arts Council or their local authority, with income streams from earned income through box office or sales of merchandise, and potentially some corporate sponsorship, although that's very competitive in the UK sector and not somewhere that most festivals see much income. Other not-for-profit governance models exist, such as community interest companies, and they're largely bracketed with social enterprises. But these haven't really taken off in the festival sector because they don't have the tax advantages that are enjoyed by UK charities. So most festivals will set themselves up as a charity at some point to receive tax advantages and fundraising advantages. So there's also the commercial festival sector. Their boards and their structures function largely as any other for-profit company. They generally tend to be music festivals or populist festivals in the UK. Most of the largest ones are actually commercial enterprises. So, for example, you might have heard of Latitude Festival, which is run by Festival Republic. Increasingly, they have quite an interesting artistic programme, but they are quite mainstream. So we thought for the purposes of this presentation, we would focus more on that subsidised sector, not-for-profit sector, because it has a different kind of structure and is more uniquely British than those other more commercial festivals. So essentially, the arrangements for overall control of the festival and paid executive staff divide into these two main areas, which I hope you can see on screen. The duties between a board and a management team are largely split as follows. And it's important to point out that it's really clear that there is distinction between what a management team of an organisation or festival is doing and what that of the board is doing. So the senior management team is largely comprised of an artistic director, who is often the CEO, and an executive director, and other executive staff if the organisation is big enough to warrant that. And they are all supported by other teams such as development, communications, and administration. It's much like the Believe organogram that Warren showed us. You have the board. Underneath them, you have the artistic director and the executive director, sometimes jointly CEO, but largely the artistic director is the CEO, and then the delivery team beneath them. So you will see from this slide that the board's role is largely to oversee, approve, and guide the management team. So, for example, where the management team is devising and implementing programmes, the board is overseeing that and supporting the programming policy. Where the management team are responsible for managing and delivering health and safety matters, procedures and policies, the board have to make sure that they're in place and are responsible for signing those policies off. But there's two common variations in this traditional governance model. One is where the chief executive of a festival is a founder director. So really, normally someone who's been an artist or a curator who originally started the festival. Typically, in this traditional model, the person will have established it and then later register it as a charity to take advantage of tax and fundraising benefits. So this means that the voluntary board has control of a project started by the founder director. So you can easily see areas of potential conflict. There are many cases of directors being fired from their own organisations, or of boards being unable to influence and govern effectively because they cannot impose kind of limitations on the founder director in a way that you can in other situations. They always have a very interesting dynamic. And so since 2006 in the UK, charities have also been able to pay a minority of board members to be on the board. And this often means having a chief executive on the board as well. Again, this does raise issues around conflicts of interest. But beyond these alternatives, the traditional state subsidised festival governance model has been remarkably resilient, mainly because alternatives don't work as well for most non-commercial festivals. The voluntary unpaid board concept comes from the medieval idea of trusteeship, where trustees are the stewards of the charity's assets. And unlike paid staff, the board members are deemed to have no financial interest in the charity. So of course there's governance challenges in festivals, financial and artistic, and it's the role of the voluntary board to support and challenge the executive. So there are specific roles for charity trustees, largely under compliance, prudence and duty of care. I won't read them all out to you, but you can see from kind of scanning through them that they are onerous responsibilities for unpaid volunteers. You know, they have a huge amount of responsibility. Sorry, just go back there. So, in summary, from a UK perspective, the traditional model of festival governance is the worst possible system except for all the other systems. It works effectively when the following things are in place. When the chair and the CEO have a good relationship and a grounding of modern governance, and there are numerous courses in the UK supporting such training. When there is diversity and balance in terms of the board's professional and lived experience, so to have a range of people on a board is essential in terms of skills, professional experience, age, gender, ethnicity, disability. When the trustees have a good understanding of the day-to-day running of the organisation and the concerns of the festival team, which is much helped by members of the board leading committees in areas such as marketing or finance and working closely with executive and non-executive staff members. When trustees engage with the organisation's festivals and projects and attend events and are active online, it's really surprising how many trustees of charities in the arts and festival sector don't actually go to the events or really understand what it is that the company is putting out there and passionate about and what their real mission is. When trustees are aware of the organisation's charitable mission and can understand it and also talk about it passionately. So often it really helps to give trustees case studies or tell them about your experience of working directly on a festival so that they can talk to people about it as effectively as you do. I think all too often we assume that trustees can talk in the way that we can about our organisations, and actually they need to be given case studies, they need to be given training into how to ask for support and to ask for money. And it's also very effective when there are clear plans for succession and board rotations so that you don't have stasis and you don't have personalities that are obstructive or not quite effective in place for too long a time. So I think most charities in the festival sector tend to have boards on rotation over a 3-year period. So in short, governance of the subsidised festival sector in the UK is reliant on unpaid volunteers who have significant control over the artistic vision and planning of the CEO and executive. But this board of trustees is a vital check and balance, and when used effectively, it can be an invaluable additional resource to a small or overstretched festival team. And that's the UK perspective for me.
Thank you so much for that Kate, this was really great because it gave us a good context. And I know that in the UK, the cultural sector is far more organized in the sense of not just having an arts council, but the way some of these conversations are led and structured. So that gives us a good comparison. In fact, Kate, I have a question for you, which was actually asked to everyone, is with coronavirus, of course, affecting the industry so badly. And I know that Arts Council has just put out, a note on for the culture sector to deal with this crisis with so many cancellations. Yeah. What do you see as alternative possibilities for the future of festivals, world over, not just in the UK, both in terms of business models, distribution, consumer experience, but also in terms of what happens now. There are people who have work to do in relation to events, and suddenly there is no work to do in relation to events. So where do you see that pivoting, that reworking, rethinking going?
Yeah, I think it's certainly a very interesting time, I think. And the Arts Council is being very supportive. People with programmes that are currently being funded are being told to get in touch to look at how they could be kind of kicked into the long grass slightly. So, how you can still deliver within a time frame that looks more likely. But I think the problem is at the moment is that no one really understands what those timescales are, and that the economic impact of coronavirus on the sector is going to really kind of potentially be devastating in terms of the number of events already cancelled, and looking at how people who were already having to address their business models because they weren't quite working, which is definitely something that was happening in the festival sector, it feels quite urgent now. So I think positively there's quite a lot that's happening already, and quite a lot of kind of learning around how we do things differently. I think it is an exercise in how we try and do things more remotely, how we work more digitally, and I think that there is investment to be able to do that, and there's time to be able to rethink things slightly. But the festival sector in the UK was already struggling to find a business model that didn't rely so heavily on increasing cuts from the Arts Council itself or other local authority and public funding. So I'm not suggesting it could be a good thing, but I think there's a lot to learn from each other. And I think from sectors like the Indian festival sector, which is incredibly savvy and has been working far more commercially. And I think, internationally, there's a lot we can learn from each other.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Kate. And we do hope, I think you're quite right in saying how devastating this is. Warren also said that we're in a really bad scenario right now. So we hope that we're able to move towards something more resilient going forward. We do not have any more time. Apologies again for this. We are technically on time at 6 o'clock and we should have finished at 6. Just a request to all the people who've been asking questions. Some of your questions have not been answered because we're not clear who have you addressed them to. So if you could just retype your question and address it to someone in particular, we'll try and answer them in the text box. But I think what to me emerges, one of the most stronger things that emerged out of this is this crisis is still unfolding, and there are several questions that we've heard today, which we will loop back into the next webinar on the 27th. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Jonathan for some wrap-up points on what you think, Jonathan, are key themes, context areas emerging out of this session that we've looked at so far.
Thanks very much, Rashmi. I won't repeat my upsum from earlier on, but in terms of the insights that we've enjoyed from the last 3 presentations, I think really the continuity of brand values and the audience experience across how the audience experiences the festival, whether it's the artistic side, the front of house, the hospitality, the consistency of that is clearly key in terms of how you bring an audience back and the memories that they hold of that festival. It's also absolutely clear in terms of the current situation how vulnerable festivals are. And perhaps there's something around how we could create a network for festivals to share experience and learning together and pool some of that experience so that in terms of resilience, rather than festivals working under their own steam and their own sense of duress, we could perhaps help support that by creating some kind of online platform for that experience to be shared, and then some of the pitfalls to perhaps be avoided. I also think perhaps picking up on several of the conversations, we should maybe look to a Festival Connections event online around how to ask for money and fundraising, because clearly that's going to be a constant, especially now in this current difficult time. And then the value of clarity of structure and accountability between a board of trustees, the executive director, CEO, artistic director, those roles, and then the clarity of that in terms of the delivery team and the management structures that help support that. I think those are the kind of the takeaways from the last 3 sessions and insights, but really to all of our speakers, a huge thanks for the generosity, the insight, and being so flexible with us in terms of coming on board at quick notice to make this work. I've seen that pretty much we've maxed out our Zoom membership, over 100 people cut throughout the whole of the 2 hours. So huge thanks for joining us as well, wherever you are. Massive thanks to my arts team for pulling this together, and big thanks to Rashmi and Dipti and the Artex team as well for working with us. We're going to look forward even more now to next week's session as well at the same time, Friday afternoon. Over to you, Rashmi.
Applause that we've been asked to do, but a big thank you to everyone. I know this applause would have been perfect in person, but we're dealing with tough times. Personally, I think, you know, the teams, I would like to actually name everyone: Jonathan, Komal, Dipti, Yadhu Krishnan, Rian, Bain, Shonali, Pooja Sen, Tripti Verma, Roshni Rao, Sonam Shetty. It takes an army to run a Zoom session, but we've learned several lessons here. I think it's pretty much gone glitch-free. What we are going to be doing is requesting you to fill this feedback form that we'll be sharing with you after. Please share your email IDs if you haven't already. We would love to hear some feedback from you on how the session went, because we will loop all of this back into our next session on the 27th. It's 27th, 4 to 6 p.m., same time. Maybe not the same link. We'll send a fresh link to you with speakers from Bangalore and Kolkata. I would also like to take this moment to thank you know, the support and partnership that we had from our venue partners, who we could not go ahead and do this event with. Ms. Smita Vats Sharma of the National Museum of Indian Cinema, the Film Museum in Mumbai, where we had planned this amazing museum tour of this beautiful museum, and then a live session at the museum, and of course the common room in Delhi. So Tanvi Bhatia from there. If you're on the chat session, thank you so much. If not, thank you nonetheless. And finally, our speakers who are unable to make it as well. So Kalpana Rao, Geo Mami Festival, and Mr. Anil Kumar of the Mumbai International Film Festival. We hope to get you back in for the next session. And finally, thank you for, you know, to all of you for joining us today. It's been in the middle of your work from home day to join us for a full 2 hours, ask us questions, engage with us. This would not have been possible without you. So thank you so much once again. And one thing that I've picked up very strongly from this, and as a response, a very urgent response to the crisis that we're dealing with, is our next Festival Connection session should be on fundraising and financial management. So that's the one we are pinning our pins on. So with that, thank you once again. And you can see all the speakers live. So thank you, and have a good evening ahead. Good luck, and please stay safe, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.